Iyer, Principal Consultant, Analytics and Wellness at Tata Motor Insurance Broking and Advisory Services Limited. As we are all managing the COVID-19 pandemic with high vaccination rate and the COVID-appropriate behavior being followed, there is still an uncertainty that is looming around for a potential third wave. Also, there are multiple challenges that we expect post offices and schools resuming completely with limited vaccine eligibility for the children currently. With this aim in mind, what we thought is it's really important to address the concern and queries of the employees as well as parents to help them to gear towards the future with the expert panelist. Be it a rapid transition to digital schooling, restriction to play, our little ones have adapted well to the plethora of the uncertainties that surrounded us. However, this has led to certain mental health challenges for parents as well as children alike, about which we are here to discuss and learn it from our experts. COVID has really taught us that there are new ways of learning, whether it's virtual tutoring, video conferencing, online exams, or events. There has been a significant surge in the usage from the time the pandemic started. Will it have some potential impacts in the near future? And what will be the behavioral impact that we are looking forward? So I take this opportunity to welcome all the expert panelists, Dr. Sanjay Oak, Dr. Harish Shetty, and Mrs. Revathi Srinivasan. They would guide us on the new normal and the ways for us to adopt to the beginning of the new era. As the session progresses, you may ask your questions and chat directly with the doctors. I am honored to introduce the expert panelist, Dr. Sanjay Oak. He is director at the Kaushalya Hospital, former dean of KEM and Nair Hospitals, and director of Mumbai's Health. Former CEO Prince Ali Khan Hospital, Mumbai. Former Vice Chancellor DY Patil University. A seasoned pediatric surgeon for more than 34 years. He has performed his first robotic pediatric laparoscopic surgery in India and has been associated with Health and Higher Education Administration for the past 15 years. Presently, he is the Director of Project Management and Professional Services of Kaushalya Hospital at Thane and UAIMS Hospital, which is a 450-bedded greenfield project at Sangli. Currently, he is also the chairman of the Maharashtra State COVID Task Force. Going to a second expert panelist, Dr. Harish Shetty, who is an MD in psychiatry. He's a consultant psychiatrist at LH Hiranandani Hospital, Powai, with more than 3 decades of experience in psychiatry. Dr. Shetty has also been identified as one of the 17 young mental health workers by the World Health Organization and invited twice for training in the years 1995 and 1996 respectively. His petition with the Maharashtra Human Rights Commission to abolish the segregated practice in schools, that is, separating children by virtue of marks and dumping those who scored less in a separate division in school, was accepted and the segregation was abolished. Dr. Harish Shetty has immense experience in the school mental health and has conducted workshops for students, teachers, school heads, and the non-teaching staff for more than 2 decades. He is working in the area of suicide prevention and is actively working in schools and colleges. Coming to our third expert panelist, Mrs. Revathi Srinivasan. She is a leading passionate educationist heading one of India's most premium education institution, Srimati Sulochana Devi Singhania School, Thane, Maharashtra. She has a career spanning over 3 decades dedicated to the cause of excellence in education. A holder of master's degree in economics and history, specialized degrees in early childhood and care and development education. She is an entrepreneur. An avid learner, she is also certified by Harvard Graduate School of Education for Leadership and the UCLA for Career Counseling. A versatile teacher who continuously connects with a 3-year-old as much as an 18-year-old, she is a hands-on principal. She has delivered keynote speeches at various Indian forums, education conclaves, and international universities like Quality Council of India, University of Aalborg, Denmark. She conducts training programs for schools and for leadership skills for the teachers, and believes strongly in the philosophy that education is beyond qualification. It's also about wings to fly, yet roots to keep grounded. I take this opportunity to welcome all the expert panelists. Thank you for giving us time today. We are looking forward for an enriching session. Like, let me mention it at the beginning. It's not a webinar per se, but a dialogue and a conversation that we are looking forward to hold it across with all the experts on the panel. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us for the session. Coming up, I would begin my session with Dr. Sanjay Oak to begin the discussion with. So, sir, as you all, you have been in the COVID task force right from the day one, and you have been an excellent person handling all the abilities, teaching all of us, guiding all your doctors who have been in the COVID task force, relentlessly working. So, with this issue of the third wave looming around across, what is your take on it, and how are we going to deal with it? Again, like we have mentioned, as we'll be celebrating the Children's Day, and as this session is more focused on what are we looking at the children outcome. So, how are we dealing with this, and what is your take on it, sir?
So, Swati, thank you for giving this opportunity. This particular issue of a looming third wave was discussed just 2 days back on the Monday night task force meeting. And let me be very honest and upfront. None of us is pretty sure whether we have really ducked it or whether it is yet to come. See, it's a balance of some factors. One is the more we vaccinate, the more amount of herd immunity will get developed, and that is going to protect. Now, when I use the word protect, it does not mean that there will be no COVID. There will be COVID, but its intensity will be less. We will have less sleepless nights for oxygen, and we will have less of mortality out of it. However, on the other hand, it is the genomic variant characteristics of that particular virus. In a short span of about, say, 6 to 8 months, we have seen alpha, beta, kappa, delta, delta derivatives, and then 0.1, 0.2 various mutations. So if the virus proves to be smarter than us, then yes, we may have trouble. And the only thing that will save us is vaccine and COVID appropriate behavior. Now, it is this CAB where the task force is really worried. I mean, you all can't exist in a state of perpetual restrictions. You are bound to be let loose at some stage. But then it should have been a constrained liberty, which is not there. When I move around in the markets, I find people jostling with each other, shoulder to shoulder, neck to neck, and either the mask is not there or it is on the chin. This is the problem. There are only two things which will really protect us. One is vaccine and second is mask. And therefore, I make an appeal right at the earnest of this program that let us vaccinate and adhere to the CAB, COVID appropriate behavior, for at least one more year to go.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for those inputs. Coming to Harish Shetty, sir. So we have seen that children have been dealing with this pandemic in the most astounding manner, if I may call it, because though as adults we are able to understand things and take the maturity within us, but however, right from the time the lockdown has been announced, they have gone way forward and accepted the things and have been actually put across the restrictions of not playing with anybody, not meeting the relatives, not meeting their friends. Also, there are some surveys that have been come up, which is conducted jointly by UNICEF and Gallup in the early 2021, that states that right now children in India seem to be reticent to seek the mental support, according to the survey conducted by them, wherein around 20,000 children were screened in across 21 countries. The astounding figures that we actually need to look about is about that only 41% of the young people between 15 to 24 years of age in India said that it's good to get support from the mental health problem, compared to the average of 83%, which is seen across in the other countries. So all of us do understand that mental health is something that's come out very rapidly during COVID times, be it in the adult age group or be it in the child age group. But considering the third wave coming forward, children not being yet vaccinated, and if there comes a situation that we might have to keep the children bound again. So how will that adversely affect the child's mind, and what do we look forward into?
The COVID epidemic has affected children differently. Different children have responded to it very differently. There are some children who want to go to school, but the parents are saying, unless you are vaccinated, we can't send you to school. There are some kids who want to excel in their studies because they want to block all the thoughts, what they are really encountering in the mind. And we need to be careful with such children. They might do very well initially, and they might go back to their thoughts when it explodes inside the mind and the body. The third thing is there are enough normal children also. You know what? Mental health professionals, UNICEF, me, you, and all of us are very keen to see trouble all the time. There are children who are normal, and they are approximately one third of the entire population. And they would want to go to school, start their life all over again. And also, all principals, all teachers, all psychiatrists, all counselors need to understand what is the coping mechanism for these children, which we can all learn for others, and that is so important. Also, there are children who have lost their friends, relatives, acquaintances, loved ones, lost their jobs, changed their homes. I still know of this boy who was shifted to Bihar because the father said, "There's no money. You and your mother go and stay in Bihar." And he has no textbooks. And the father said that I would want to withdraw your admission from the school is the 10th standard, and I would like to you to start working so that you can feed the family. The child phoned up the school principal, and the school principal was so kind not to give the LC. Give him the books, and he stands first in the class, even earlier without the books and with the books. So the aspirational need of children is phenomenal. The society needs to stand with them. We see panic attacks. We see refusal to go to school because online is very cool and safe. I can switch on and I can do other things. And there are children who are eager to go to school and they say online nahi jamta hai, and it's so difficult. But lastly, I would like to say, opening schools is not an SOP. It's not chalo school chalo ke SOP. Opening schools needs hand-holding by the administration. I would request Dr. Sanjay Oak and all others who are leaders to provide a helpline to teachers, parents, and children in case when they start going to schools, let them manage their anxieties through the helpline, and that is so important. I would ask the pediatric task force in the state of Maharashtra and in all states be available, have conversations at least alternate day, turn by turn, so that parents, teachers, and students and others and all stakeholders are reassured. They feel that they are supported, and if there's any high risk, we need to really help the children. Also, SOPs can start schools, but support can help schools to function, which is very important. So let's not hang schools for any minor lapse of SOPs. Let's not police schools like the way we policed also restaurants for a long time. Let's be supportive and let's be with them, holding their hands. At the same time, schools also need to understand that they need to balance and do not overestimate the resilience of the teachers. They are from the same universe. And do not estimate the resilience of the principals. They also have faced a lot of difficulties. So let's work together as a family. No teacher will be perfect in the classroom, but let's keep our eyes and our ears open for those who are doing extremely well to learn from them, for those who are not paying attention and probably not interested, for those who are quite irritable and offer help. I would say, Dr. Oak Saab, you have been a dynamite across the last 2 years. And I still remember in Bombay that ward-wise, you have created an army of professionals for beds, for oxygen, and Mumbai has led and has been acknowledged by the World Health Organization also. We need to do that same thing for our children across time, and that is something which we request the task force, both pediatric and the COVID task force, to apply themselves so that no child is left unattended. Every teacher is supported and every school is also supported.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the description in such a short time. Coming to Revathi, ma'am, you have been there. You have been a performer there at the school, managing online schooling. So we all understand that with the coronavirus pandemic, there was a sudden shift from the traditional method of schooling to the online mode. With the sudden shift, we are still imagining and reimagining future, whether this is going to be the way forward, whether we would have a hybrid model of teaching. Are we putting across new encounters to children to learn and to carry it forward accordingly? However, with the school resuming, there are also multiple questions amongst parents ranging from protection, hygiene methods adopted for social distancing, and similar other queries. So what is your take on that? And with Singhania School being one of the premier leading institutions with a whole lot of children, wherein I could say that, like we just mentioned, with around 7,000 plus children presently in Bombay itself. So understand that the administrative work also plays an equal role in this. So how has it been? And nevertheless, not to forget to mention about the teachers who have been one of the prime leaders, I would say, to adopt too quickly the COVID method of learning, the online method, starting from a chalk and a board, which we have already always observed, going to the online medium with the webinar connects and by teaching students on the webinar mode. It has been a real journey for the teachers as well. So, what is your take on that, and how do we see this developing further?
Thank you very much, Swati, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I'd like to say that in a world where disruptions can occur at any time, I think academic institutions, more particularly schools, because we handle younger children, must be ready to adapt at any point of time. And I think the three words that have come into our vocabulary for schools and colleges perhaps would be flexibility, adaptability, and fluidity. I think these are three words that we need to not just understand, but also digest and practice. Because I think those are the three words that, and I would like to give it to all the teachers, the support staff of school and across the world and call them edu warriors because each one of them stood in the front trying to adapt with the changing times. Whether it was online teaching, the first thing that every school did was move on to online teaching the way they did. And in a month's time, everyone realized that it is not the same teaching real time and teaching online. If you have to get effectively across to children and active learning has to take place, there has to be hands on experiences just as much as we had in school. But how do we give the hands on experience online? This was a question that was looming large. And I think every school tried to find ways by which they could reach across to every child in the school. The first thing that I did at Singhania was a fact that I realized very early in middle March itself, because I started to anticipate this in March first week itself, that things may not be very rosy. And I started to study systems. I started to study technology that can blend very well for our children. And therefore, we started to work on various ways by which we could make teaching more interesting. And what is virtual teaching was so different from what is real time teaching. And therefore, we tried to adapt completely to a new world. I would call it liquid learning because just as liquid adapts to the container and and takes the shape of the container in which it is, teaching changed the way children want it. It almost became personalized and customized, and that's what was the advantage of the system. So while we saw the disappearance of existing structures, patterns, codes, everything, we also found out ways by which we could come and rise to the occasion and bring out the best. At the same time, let me tell you, there's one thing that I really would agree with Dr. Shetty was that nothing would have been possible if we saw parents on the other side of the fence. You had to take the parents along. They are co-partners in education. And if we take parents along with us, the children along with us, we walk the same path together, we would really see good sunshine always. And we'll face good sunshine. So it's very important to me that we take parents along and we take them into confidence. So while we are making every move, I try to brief parents time to time, saying, now this is what is happening, this is what we can do, and this is what we plan to do, and how are we going to go about it. This way, we walk the path together, and I think the journey becomes a little more interesting and easier. And to a large extent, I think we succeeded. Yes, we, of course, children would miss coming to school. I agree with that because nothing like school. But at the same time, when schools reopen, also, we fully, because right now it's grade 8 to 12. But I think we need to give time and space for parents to understand what it is. Schools need to take parents into confidence, tell them how they're going to go about it, collect the best of expertise from all doctors like Dr. Oak and all of them who've been right in the front of the scenario, and take their advice for how to open schools step by step. I think it's more about careful planning, not rushing into anything. That's more important. And I think very informed decisions that schools will take will really help children and teachers better. So I really think that it's important for all of us to wait, watch, go slow, and not think that syllabus has to be completed. I am afraid that I'm not of the view that syllabus needs to be completed. Curriculum has to go on as per the schedule. We had planned it to be done by January. We are not able to do. These things do not come in now. I still believe that flexibility is a word over here, and we need to be flexible with our curriculums, with our delivery of curriculums, with our examination patterns, examination systems, all of it. If there is some kind of fairness and openness that we do in our discussions, I think it will help a lot in making people understand that we are all going through the same passage, and let's all travel it together with a smile. And I think that happens when we build confidence. So I think building confidence for me and being able to cope with the trying times, because there are children who have lost parents, who have lost both parents, who have lost near and dear ones. It's important for us to open up avenues where they speak. So, unless they do that, we won't know what the problem is. So, I think it's very, very important for us to get back to the table and across and reach out to everyone. That's the way forward to me.
Thank you so much, Revathi ma'am, for that insightful discussion that we just had. Sanjay sir, coming back to you, this is a question that's been there in most of us. We have been reading newspapers, considering that the third wave may occur, not occur, basis the description that you just gave, because none of us actually know about it. But can we say that COVID has now become endemic in India, and then follow all the protocols and the precautions that you have asked us to follow?
No, scientifically, you cannot say about endemicity because the pandemic is still on. So, unless and until the pandemic is called off, then depending upon the prevalence, which is the number of cases coming in a stipulated period in a particular geographical territory, you talk of endemicity. So, just now, India is a part of pandemic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that. Coming back to Harish Shetty, sir, like Revathi ma'am just mentioned, that there have been cases where kids have lost their parents or they have lost their close relative with whom they were really attached. So we do understand that there could be cases of a post-traumatic stress disorder which may be noticed in children, or maybe by the time the relatives or any near and dear ones notice that, they would be very late in it, or maybe late in seeking the necessary medical advice at that time. So, how do we look out for these signs, and what is your opinion on that? You're on
Harish,
mute.
unmute yourself.
It is. I think this is an opportunity for the school management to improve the developmental abilities of teachers. Mental health is in the middle. It's not on the periphery at all. So, as Madam also said and Sir also said, that delivery has to be flexible, and that is not very easy because teachers most of the times don't deliver what has been taught to them in B.Ed, but they deliver their life, their experiences. So that one shift in the minds of the teachers, where delivery can be open-ended, where children can also share, and in that sharing there'll be a lot of feelings also experienced and expressed, where teachers should find out subtle ways of checking whether the child is in distress or not. So there are subtle ways, there are direct ways. Now, I would say every teacher is a storyteller, and every teacher has to share stories, convert the matter into stories, and at the same time also use the time which is there for teaching as well as feeling, which means teachers who discuss feelings inside the classroom for a very short time and discuss health, they will find that children who are in pain will openly talk about it in the classroom, and then you can always figure out whether it is concern, stress, distress, or disease, and really refer them appropriately. That is number two. Number three, which is very important, is screening of children for emotional issues is a must. I mean, we screen kids in our schools for skin diseases, ophthalmic problems, malnutrition. Mandatory screening for emotional disorders is a must. And for that, you need to understand that parents need to be on board. It should be a joint family approach where we screen the families. We do it in our school at SM Shetty. We screen families as well as children for emotional issues. And then we find that some of them, though they appear very normal and they appear very smiling, have very serious emotional issues. And then we address them. There are some parents who say, "Hamara bachche ko kuch nahi hua hai. Don't do anything to them." But there we use a lot of persuasion, a lot of discussion with different people in the school system to persuade and convince the parents to see to it that they go and seek help. There are parents who are breaking down when they come and see us, and they break down very late, also because of financial issues and also because of issues of family, EMIs, and future. Schools cannot provide a lot of financial capabilities, but what the schools can do also in their own school compound have support groups of parents who have difficulties, life difficulties. In that support group, are we going to give them any EMIs? Are we going to give them any doses? No, we can't. But when they come together, the light which was dark inside the man is lighted. भेजे की बत्ती को फिर से जलाना. This does not have an English translation, which is as effective as the Hindi phrase. Is so important. So school is not only responsible for the children and the families. School is responsible for the community. And so new initiatives in the schools beyond education is important. So we are thinking of starting a support group for families who are in great distress, and there we will help them to remove the cobwebs in the mind so that they think about new ideas and move ahead in life. Moving on is easy to say, but moving on when there's a support group is much better. At the same time, the third development level for the school is those who have never believed in counseling, in having a counseling center, now have started saying that we want to start a counseling center. We want to have a full-fledged center. What is the cost? And I tell them very clearly, the cost of a counselor in a school is 2 rupees per child per month. And the cost of a counseling center in a school is 5 rupees per child per month. You spend so much on annual days, so much on days of a foundation. Mental health is extremely important to be invested in, and that will take the school to a different developmental level. And lastly, a lot of institutional learning has happened in the COVID period without knowing. I mean, we don't know that we have learned, but we have learned a lot. A lot of people have done a lot of great interventions, and this institutional memory has to be passed to the next generation. So, God forbid if something happens, say 100 years from now or 50 years from now, they have enough institutional experience which can be used in the schools even then.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for that. Taking the discussion further, Revathi ma'am, wanted to understand what we have seen is there is some sort of emotional insecurity that has developed in kids due to the online schooling. Now, once the school resumes, considering that children of all age groups would be going to school, what are the emotional gaps in learning that one needs to be concerned about, and how do we tackle this?
I'll take off from where Dr. Shetty left. In fact, I'd like to start on that note that we started the year by having a program called Rondo. I wouldn't say it's a program, it was a daily event called Rendezvous with Kids, where the kids could interact with their teacher on a one-to-one and speak about every kind of upheaval or high moments that they had, good and bad, and things that affected them. And it was just absolutely an open matter. It was so surprising that children as young as 4 years could speak so clearly about what it meant to them to lose a grandparent, or what it meant having a parent lose his job or her job while they were all together in a family. And it was an eye opener, I'm sure, for the teachers as well. But I learned that my teachers got lot more sensitive, lot more understanding, and they could understand the child, and they were even very supportive towards every children. So I think that's what we need. And I think that's what I think Dr. Shetty was also referring to, that we have open dialogues. Even now, when we have open classes from 8 to 12, in fact, we don't do teaching in school. What we are doing is chatting, because I think children need to let it out first. They need to talk, they need to come to terms to their own thoughts, their own thought processes, because they may not be cohesive for many people. It may not be cohesive thoughts, because many of the children have mentioned, and I'm talking about young adults, they are teenagers, who mentioned that they have been talking only in monosyllables because they feel, what's there to talk to parents? Whole day we are with them. So what is there to talk? But don't you chat? So the chatting is, did you finish your homework? Have you studied for your test? कल टेस्ट है ना, प्रिपरेशन हो गई है क्या बराबर? फिर कितने मार्क्स आए? This is the conversation. This is not a conversation. This is almost questions and answers, almost interrogation, if I can put it, sorry to say. But that's where it is. So children need conversations happening, which could be, I did this when I was a kid. I really enjoyed it. And I made this blunder. I think as an adult, as a parent, and as a teacher, if each one of us are able to admit that, that brings us closer to the children. And I think that's the beginning of opening communication lines. So to me, school reopening is all about that, is about coming to some physical exercises, stretching exercises, some aerobics. They like Zumba, do a Zumba for 10 minutes. It just doesn't make a difference as long as they are able to connect back to school. So I understand that remote learning sort of got themselves a little distanced, because they have not been able to connect with their friends the way they would have done otherwise. But at the same time, I think they have come out of the shell quite a bit in the past few, maybe few days, I would say, or a couple of months, where they are coming down to play at least. So I think to that extent they would come in very young children, where parents are still protective and don't allow them to go down. You will see that difficulty. It is the responsibility of schools. We have to work as community centers, as it was rightly said. We're not going to function as schools anymore. In fact, the whole concept of schooling has changed. It's gone topsy turvy. And I mentioned this 5 years back, that the whole bubble will burst, and someday we will all be seeing schooling in a different fashion. I didn't know that such a thing would bring across the change. But that's what's going to be. It's going to be where you're going to be seeing the school being an extension of the home, and the home being an extension of the school, where parents, students, and children, and of course the teachers all come together to work towards a project and the delivery of the project. But at the same time, let me tell you that we have to open channels of communication even in our homes while the children are still at home. Please talk to your children, and talk beyond curriculum, talk beyond textbooks, talk beyond examinations. It's about chatting about everything on earth, and knowing their friends better. It's time for us to know that with teenagers, it's important to know what are their kind of lifestyles. If they're all the time shut inside their closed doors, do check out with them what's happening. Not by the way of questioning them, but being a part of their lives. And I think that's the only way by which we can open gates where children will start feeling themselves. There is going to be a setback, but I am not at all concerned about learning gaps. Learning gaps can be bridged anytime, but emotional gaps have to be filled in right from day one before they enter school. So I think all of us have to go out of our way as adults to make the place be very cheerful, very chirpy, very bright, and sunny. Because unless we put on that effort, we're not going to. No matter what chaos and turmoil we may have in our minds, I think we need to put up that front. And as adults, parents, teachers, if you have difficulties, it's important that you open up too, because we're not talking about schools only for children. We're talking about schools for the teachers as well. The kind of setbacks, many of them have moved to their villages, have moved to their homes. Spouses would have lost jobs. All of that could have happened. So they've gone through a lot of turmoil. So, as institutions, also, schools also have to be very understanding towards teachers, because ultimately they're going to bring out the next generation, right? And as it is, this generation that's coming up is the alpha generation. We already, and they are children of the millennial generation and the Z generation, or Z generation as we would call. So these alpha generations, as it is, are going to be less in talking, more in your digital space. So we need to get them out of it so that they learn to enjoy life just as we did.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much for that. Sanjay sir, thank you. I can see you responding on the comments on the questions that's being raised by the participants. Having said that, sir, wanted your opinion as well, as we already understand that we are seeing a revolutionary change across in the way the education is being done right now. Know that you are very closely associated, and you do write columns in the newspaper. We wanted your take on this as to how are we progressing, and what mode of education do we still prefer? Will it be a hybrid one, or it is traditional versus hybrid right now?
Yeah. Allow me to express some different thoughts on this.
Yes, sir.
Apart from my association as a chairperson of task force, I've been a pediatric surgeon for last 35 years and I have operated practically about 45,000 plus children by now, from day one of life to 12 years of life. My work stops at 12 years, clinical work. So I've seen children in different mood swings from different strata of the society. Every child is different. And it is not the earning capability of the family, but it is the innate makeup of a child that helps him to stand apart from the crowd. Swati, I don't feel that COVID has done everything bad. It has given us some good things which we need to pick up, germinate, and nurture. Digitalization has become a blessing to us. And every technology is good, provided you are able to differentiate between a technology and a toy, and you don't allow technology to overpower you. You overpower the technology. In my opinion, having been a teacher in a medical school for almost last 35 years and then a vice chancellor of the university, I think digital learning is the way to go ahead now. And hybrid patterns of education should now become the norm of the day. And it is not only in education, but it is even in healthcare dispensing. It is not required that every patient has to come and flock in the hospitals. They could approach us using the virtual media, and the same rule should now be made applicable to learning. Now, I'm aware of Revathi Madam's contributions. My own son has been a Singhanian, and I hope that my grandson is now going to be another Singhanian. Unfortunately, it's not the true plight in the state. So if we want to spread quality education across the length and breadth of Maharashtra, there can't be a better choice than digitalization. I won't name, but there is a new ad of a Hindi superstar now coming out with two teachers, two teaching, two gains, two. That's what he advocates. I won't name. I take this concept in teaching. I classify for every lesson a proximate teacher and a resource teacher. A proximate teacher is a proctor, is a mentor who hence holds your hand and teaches you. It's so true in surgery, which I teach to my residents. But there can also be a resource teacher who may be thousands of miles away, but can participate using the technology and teach. And even one or two sentences get the entire essence completely different. While I was the vice chancellor of D.Y. Patil University, we set up a virtual classroom, and that completely changed the pattern of teaching at a university level. I had written an article in a university journal, and it said, mobile phone is the best medium of university education. See, when we were students, me and Harish, postgraduate students, to write a thesis for MS, MD, DM, MCH, you go to a library, go through the journals, find out the relevant issue, and then to know that the relevant page that you wanted, 1215, has been torn. Not anymore. If there is one new thought that my young resident, and I learn from my residents, I have to only access Google Mata Ki Jai in my operation theater and I get the reference. So I think in the schools, first of all, we teachers will have to unlearn quite a few things to learn new things. Digitalization and virtual world is going to be the watchword from now on. And it's not that it has happened today. Think of Dronacharya and Ekalavya. If Dronacharya was a capitation teacher, Ekalavya was a virtual disciple. And he learned the art of archery by virtual techniques. All that we have to do is take it ahead now. Even if the task force gives a green jhandi for starting of the schools, let me not name, but two prominent schools in Mumbai who started. One developed 30 cases of COVID in children, and the second one had 21 cases. I won't name the schools. This is a reality all across the world. There are articles in journals where it says Scandinavian countries. These are the schools open, shut, reopen, shut. In US, it's completely divided. Some schools profoundly vaccinated, schools being used as vaccination centers, gone ahead and open. In areas where vaccination was not propagated at all, schools have had problems. So therefore, I don't see that whether we say 11th of November or 22nd of November, it's not going to change that rapidly. So it is better to accept that new change as a new norm of life. And just as we are accepting banking by virtual modalities, we have to accept education also as a hybrid. Okay, in 1 month, my child will go to school for 15 days. On the remaining 15 days, he will be in a virtual mode. I find one of the parents also asking about the commuting problems, which is a real problem in a metropolis. Well, if you have half the number of children going to a class on any given day, I think the commuting problems will also get eased off. So, Swati, I just want to give a concluding thing to this particular part. We will have to change a lot from inside. And that change will be initiated by the principals, deans, and directors, assimilated by the teachers in their systems, propagated to the parents, and then expected of the children.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. That was really nice to hear the examples, the way you put it across. Yes, indeed, a long way to go, and indeed something that we have learned with the hybrid model. I, as a parent, I have an 8-year-old daughter, so I would put it in a personal way. Like, I would like to ask Harish Shetty, sir. Like Dr. Oak mentioned, it's going to be the way forward when we would expect 15 days working and 15 days not working. But then across India, when we speak about on a pan-India basis, there are some states where schools have already resumed. There are kids already going to school. So with metropolitan cities, we have this commute problem. We don't have the daycare centers still on. We don't have the support staff who could help us if offices start resuming completely. Also, offices have resumed in multiple, depending on the sector and the industry. The offices have also started resuming with 100% capacity. So as a parent, there are multiple things that goes in our mind, like how do we, when we go to office, who will take care, considering that we have been with the kid for more than 2 years, 1.5 years now, what are the behavioral changes that we expect? Will they be able to cope up with the curriculum when they go to the school in person? So these are the thoughts that cross my mind when I think about my child. So your take on that?
The first thing is when you go to the office and when you start going to the office, there will be a little problem. Children who have been with the parents for a long time cling to their mothers much more than their fathers. Jau nako, don't go. Go after 2 days. Why are you going now? Tell your boss. I'll speak to your boss. Is one child who told his mother. But then Judai is something which happens during different parts of life. It's after 10th standard, after 12th standard, once you find a job, once you get married. So separation and union are two sides of the same coin. And what is important for us to do as adults is when you are in the office, How do you communicate with your child at home? Now, do you talk about the essentials? कितना पढ़ाई किया, homework किया क्या नहीं, आज सचमुच attend किया क्या नहीं class, or you talk about life and feelings. So those parents who are able to talk about feelings can get work done from their children. Most of them. That is number one. Number two, as Dr. Oak said very beautifully, that the world is changing, and I think that's a fact. I mean, that's absolute a fact, whether you like it or not. My son, who's 25, goes to office thrice a week, and thrice a week is supposed to be at home. So this norm will last for a long. There will not be 100% schools start work. This norm will remain, and each school will have to take a decision of how to do this mix and match. And I don't think there's one rule for all the schools. Impossible. Impossible at all. Residential schools will have a different norm. Schools which are densely which live in densely populated surroundings will have different norm. Zilla Parishad schools will have different norm. So every school principal needs to really use her wisdom and through dialogue with parents of how to do this mix and match so that children are accommodated in schools as and when they're required to. They also are happy and they also learn. Learning is important. Remember that. You can't postpone learning for a very long time. I completely agree. I'm a psychologist, I'm a psychiatrist. Still, I'm saying that learning is important because learning also gives you joy after the emotional gap is managed. And that is point number two. How things will evolve, nobody knows. If you look at the history of pandemics, Dr. Oak knows the mutation took much longer in different countries. So cholera bacteria, it mutated after 6 months and went to a different country. So we do not know. As of now, we know only one thing, and that one thing is that we will play by the ear, play by the eyes, and use our coconut to the best of ability so that we maintain the health and also learning of the child in different circumstances. So if I were you, ma'am, I would go to office, but I will call up my kid and ask her, how was the day? Have you eaten the food which I kept in the fridge? I really got up at 6 o'clock and made this for you. And I would also talk about my office. Are in Tata Motors now, I had a long workshop and two guys really hassled me here. Or I would talk about good things which happened in the office. When you talk about good things or difficult things in the office, children start talking about good and difficult things in their life. So so art of conversing from the office space to the home is a workshop by itself. I conduct these workshops very often. So that is number two. Number three, what are your anxieties? See, your anxieties, it's difficult in among couples who are married and both are working very hard to make two ends meet and to save something for their own children. In when you come back, you are irritable, and communication between couples for children is also very difficult. So, what are you doing for yourself in this era? Are you sitting and breathing deep in a train or in a bus or in a car? Are you just playing with your phone or are you doing a little micro pranayam in the car? Are you saying that I'll just go for a 15-minute walk after I come back? I wear my shorts, I wear my t and just run around for 15 minutes and come back. So, do you take care of your own health and then you'll be able to really talk peacefully with your husband or with your wife? Otherwise, you start fighting. So the peace inside the hearts of the parents will improve the fear of uncertainty, will improve the quality of conversation with the children, and we take one day at a time. We take one day at a time, and we see how things evolve. And as Dr. Oak, who heads our task force in Maharashtra and all others, would see what is the best thing to be done. So every school will have to have a different plan depending upon the place where it is located, depending upon the issues with the parents, the socioeconomic economic status, and the needs of different stakeholders inside the school. It's a tough job. It's a tough management job. Honestly saying, it's a very tough management job. But I'll tell you what, most of the principals will become PhDs without the PhD in the next 2 years. And each of them should write a book on what they did in the last 3 years in the school. And that will be institutional memory, which I always insist. Indians, we leave our insights in the cosmos, assuming that somebody after 100 years will absorb it through his brain. No. I think each principal or Dr. Oak would have a million anecdotes. So put down all this and make these insights, wisdom, which can be used for others, and that's what even I'm very much interested in.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. I could see Revathi ma'am smiling throughout with many of the nuggets being applied to the institution as a whole. Yes, madam, your take and your say on it.
Yes, I really think very similar. I think it is important for us to take things forward by taking all of us together and looking at education as a whole. And let's understand that education is not about qualifications. Let us understand that it is not about acquiring a whole set of degrees. It is about having the right kind of values and the overall, holistic development of children. So whether it is when it comes to education, it also means that you get yourself rooted with the basic knowledge of everything. At the same time, the right kind of attitudes that we need to develop, the right kind of skills that we need to get, and the right kind of habits that our children must develop. So I think it's not just applicable for children, but also for adults. I think these are four things that we have. I think these, as Dr. Oak rightly said, this has opened us a complete, a panoramic view of what life can be and what life teaches us. And I think we should pick up all these lessons and start off from where we've left. So we can't say, I went back, in my times, my school was like this, in my school, as a narration of a story, you can say that. But we cannot keep making comparisons, just as we do. We cannot compare children and their abilities. I think one can not compare education during this time and education during, and no one should ever use this word, I passed out from this batch of COVID year or the pandemic year. I find it very strange that children use that word so often. And I think there's nothing called, it's just that a year that was different. And I think the way we start accepting that, the better it is. And as again, I would support what Dr. Oak rightly said. It gave us so many opportunities. I think unlearning and redesigning and looking at education differently was a great opportunity. And I think people who hadn't really thought about education this way, we tried to do it. And this is there to stay. Now, this is the new, or if I can say, reimagining education. This is what we have already reimagined education to be. And we never know. It need not be another disruption, but we have started to think our way forward is from here. We have started to take off from this point. And I think it's very important for us to start thinking how we can be digitally smarter, how we can use it. And as I mentioned, the alpha generation that we are now handling, those children between 2000, born between 2010 and 2024, are not just digital learners, but they've just been born in the digital space. And when they're born in that, they are going to be far quicker. Their skills are going to be so different from what you and I have. And it's also going to be different from what their parents are, though their parents themselves are the 2001s, the born in 2000 and a little earlier than that. So I think it's time for us to relook at education. Do not look at scoring marks as an indicator of whether the child has got good education. So we understand that we have to redefine education. So it is not about academics or scholastic ability, but non-scholastic ability. The interests of the child, is it being met by the natural aptitude and the capabilities of the child, along with, if I multiply that, and I would say that our success would depend upon the capabilities that we have multiplied by the environment that we are in. So I think it's a function of that. And if we look at that and we make the best use of the opportunities, the best of our potential. So now our work should be not towards getting the topmost score or getting the topmost thing. It's about being able to utilize our potential. Are we able to use our potential well? Are we able to bring out the potential? And how do you realize you got this potential? Unless you're thrown into circumstances. Okay, so you will have to take on these challenges. The golden era of living in an office spaces, that is all over. It's all about entrepreneurship. It's all about being self initiated. It's all about taking one's own enterprise. It's about taking risks. And one has to be prepared for that. For that, all the attitudes that one needs to develop, we need to develop in our children. And for that, we have to get them to get a good positive environment in our schools. And I'm particularly talking about schools and homes, that we have to create a positive environment. The language we talk, whether it at home or in school, should be very, very similar, so that we give them a very positive environment which will help them to develop the best potential in them.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Sanjay Oak, we would like to hear your thoughts with new age challenges, with hybrid model of schooling going further, which may happen, may not happen. It's still a question mark for us. But then there are also new concerns that we observe in children. So, with respect to their patient levels, with respect to their signs of anxiety, with respect to the peer pressure that they develop, and you have been dealing with kids for nearly more than 3 decades now. So the generation that Revathi madam just spoke about, so even parents being hyper in most of the things, kids not listening to them, kids throwing their own tantrums. So this is rather a generic question to all the three panelists, like how do we deal on these issues, which we are seeing in the new age or the millennial Z that we see, with enough immediate satisfaction that needs to be looked into, too much of satiety levels, too much of changes, or for that matter, going in for a weekend break very often. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, it's true, Swati, that this is a generic question, and I may say that Harish is better qualified to answer this. I'll still try and answer you through my own experience and life. There is never an era which is devoid of problems, whether it was my father's, my grandfather's, or my grandsons. It is just that the nature of problems change. As it has been always said, that speaker asks a question to the audience that how many of you would like to have a stressless life, a life without problems? And then everyone puts the arms up. And then he says that, okay, then the place for that is 6 feet under the ground. How many of you would like to go there right now? So it's just that the nature of problems change. I refer to another point that I think Harish made a mention of, and that is, or I think Madam made a mention. Let us not make, as elders, a mistake of calling the pass outs of 2021 or 2020 as COVID graduates. This will be the maximum injustice. I mean, I had a lecture last week in a Panvel College of Engineering, and a young boy and a girl came right up to the car when I was leaving and said, "So can you suggest something that we will not be stamped throughout our life and our certificates will not carry that particular badge as we were COVID graduates?" Swati, I'll tell you, I got admission in a medical school in 1977. This is a very celebrated year. I belong to the old 11th standard. This was the year when 12th standard and 11th. Yeah. I'm coming to that. Harish, I'm coming to that. This was the year when 12th standard and inter science collided for the first time. The seats were not increased. And then, after agitation for nearly 6 months, I got an admission because the seats were increased. I'm very honest, and I confess it, that I thank my parents profusely for giving me birth before the era of NEET. I would have never walked into a medical college with NEET papers. I'm very clear about that. But then, Swati, till today, we are recognized in medical fraternity as Rajnarayan batch in the center and Vasant Dada's batch, because late Shri Vasant Dada Patil was our chief minister, as Dada's batch. And we carried that stamp. Wherever we stood first in university, oh, ye to Dada batch ka hai. The point is, I, at least with my class fellows, decided to convert this threat into an opportunity using the SWOT principles, and every one of my batch fellow excelled. They either have their own hospitals, or if they are in service, they have become deans, directors, and vice chancellors. So I think let us not make this mistake of putting a stamp on the kids that you passed engineering because it was very easy. We decided to pass. There was no real exam. It's not that kid's fault. You could not conduct it. And that's why when this question came in Maharashtra Health Sciences University of how to conduct examinations, we evolved hybrid methods of conducting MS and MBBS examinations. And I think that's the way forward. So to close my point over here, there is no generation which is devoid of problems. It is just that the nature of problems changes. And we should never ever make a mistake of saying in my times, or some of senior clinicians say in my experience. There's nothing like in your experience. What is true is today, not yesterday. So if we want to make citizens for tomorrow, we better change the education and the pattern today itself to make them competent and capable enough for tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Harish Shetty, sir, same question to you also. The new age tantrums and how do we deal with it? And I think, like sir rightly mentioned, it's not that the challenges are not there in all the generations. So I think parents are also equally responsible in the way they handle these concerns. Or I would rather put it as new age parents are not well equipped enough to understand the child and deal it in the way. Like Revathi madam precisely mentioned, with all of them working, everybody having their own concerns and accomplishing the goals that they have set forward in their lives. How do we look at these younger ones who have been time and then evolving on a regular basis for us to deal with these health concerns that we take up?
I think the first thing is, as Dr. Sanjay Oak said beautifully, every era has its problems, and every era will find its own answers. I mean, that's the bottom line. The second most important thing is, let us accept that unless there's a joint family between parents and schools, things will not change. You cannot have authoritarian PTA, nor can you have an authoritarian school. And gone are the days of Amitabh Bachchan who says, "Jahan se main khada hota hu, wahan se line shuru hoti." It has to be a team, and that will parents will help you to resolve a lot of issues with other children and other parents. Though there are irate parents in every school who file court cases against the school. I mean, every school. There's not a single school where there's one or two irate parents who have not hassled the school for years. The third most important thing is mental health is very important. And mental health is not important because it was not important earlier. In spite of COVID, it is important. And mind and the body, they talk to each other. And what's very important is lift the mental health of the children and the teachers and the principal will find that, as Madam said beautifully, education will happen. Marks alone would not define who's educated. That is the third issue. And the fourth issue is we all discussed. Every school principal should be like our Mahatma Gandhi ji or Adi Shankaracharya. Adi Shankaracharya traveled across the country 3 times. Am I right, Revathi?
Yes.
Thrice, no? Thrice. And Mahatma Gandhi traveled the country twice on the advice of Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Every principal should not stick to their principal's rooms. School is a community. भ्रमण करो अपने एरिया में, अपने मोहल्ले में, and go to other schools, sit down with other principals, have teas, exchange your learnings, and share your resources. And that's how we can build Atmanirbhar Bharat. We cannot be isolated in our institutions anymore. We may have our own flag, but the flag of the country is much more powerful than our own flag. So principals need to go around without invitation, have a cup of tea with the principal across. He or she might get shocked. Why did Revathi come to my school today? But then slowly they will learn that it is the community which will lift all the schools together, and when they work with each other. And that's what the RNA virus has taught us. तुम्हारी औकात दिखा दिया भाई, तुम कुछ नहीं हो, इकट्ठा होके काम करो. And that, I think, is one of the most important learnings from the COVID. And we have to be in touch with ourselves. We have to be in touch with our feelings and see to it that as a community, as a mohalla, as a district, as a ward, as a town, as a city, as a state, as a country, we join hands and work together. And the more we work together, the better will our school be. Like I always tell young parents, when you go to a classroom and you see all the drawings in the KG class, don't look for your child's drawing. First, look at the entire landscape. See the beauty of all the drawings, and then if you are able to appreciate the other beauties, you'll be able to appreciate your child better. And that I think is what we need to learn, and RNA virus has actually taught us.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for that. Yes, ma'am, your opinion on the same.
So I think all children are born intelligent, and everyone uses the environment and the opportunities as best as they can, and they bring out the best in them. So I think the first lesson that I would like to draw is the fact that accept people as they are, okay, with all the positives and what, if you can call them, that little deficiencies that one may have. So I think, where does a gap come in? Where does the gap between a school and a parent come in, or a school and a student come in, or a student and the parent come in? It comes because of expectations. And I think when the expectations become wider and wider, that's when we can see a lot of turmoil that the child goes through. The second that I can see is that as a community, we have to start learning to respect each other. So, mutual respect, learning to respect oneself, and mutually respect others as well. This is the second quality, I think, as a community of people. When I'm saying community, I'm talking in terms of all the stakeholders in the field of education. Okay, be it the school, be it the teachers, parents, whatever it is. And the third one is being able to accept, being able to tolerate, or tolerance is not a quality I think we need to have. We need to be able to accept wholeheartedly. I think the minute we start doing that, we start accepting people as they are, and therefore we can build things together. Otherwise, there's always that did my idea come? It's not about my idea or your idea, it's about our idea that came across. So I think that's the way that we can take things forward henceforth, because I see a lot of gaps there, especially when it comes to the expectation gap, and then that's what leads to it. So I think every parent, for example, I've noticed, ma'am, he got only 92%. Had there been exam, he would have definitely got a 96%. So there were no exams for anyone. So it doesn't matter. And is 92 less? My question is that. Okay, so I think that sentence comes with an element or a kind mood of regret. Okay, a voice of regret, which makes me feel sorry for the child, because the child is standing like this with his heads down because he feels he's done a crime. So he says, but madam, I'm telling my parents I would have done better had the exams been there. So when the exams were announced, this child did not apply for the exams. So I called the child and I said, you said you wanted to improve on your marks. Would you write? He said, no, I'm not prepared to write the exams now. I'm okay with this 92%. So then what was wrong? But the parent kept telling me that, no, ma'am, we want to apply. I said, please ask your son for his consent. No, no, I'm telling you. I said, no, it's not about you telling. Is your child willing to come? Because if you're not willing, then you will have a problem. So that's where it comes from. That's what I'm trying to say when I say that it's important for us to be able to connect with our children. And I think even giving targets. So what's your target? You're in grade 10. You put up a board on your forehead, I'm in standard 10, do not disturb. I'm in grade 12, I have the NEET or the IIT JEE, and so I cannot do. So I have to go for an integrated program. Not at all. It is, as per one can do as one's best, is what that really matters. But the first question is the child wanting to do what you are asking them to do? Okay, so I think that's very important. Today, education system has come with flexibility. There are choices of subjects. So in our school in grade 9, you can drop out science and maths. Very often, parents would ask me, I don't want my son to drop out maths and science. Why? Because there would be a stigma attached to him. Now, who has decided to give the stigma, put the stigma on the child? It is the fact that the child doesn't like maths, he doesn't want to do it. It's not because he has a learning disability or or a difficulty that he wants to do about science and maths. He just doesn't like the subject, and he is confident that he's not going to be studying those subjects later in life. So I think there are no stigmas attached, and I think we should start looking at life as a whole, and as I mentioned, without seeing life through someone else's eyes. See it in your own eyes and see as you as a family, and I think that's what's going to bring out the best in all of us.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much for that. Oak sir, you had mentioned a comment about how does technology help oneself, and we should know when to stop it, or we should ensure that that doesn't empower us in any way. Now, considering that many of these kids have got accustomed, be it from age standard one or till the above ages that we look into, all of them are very pro in using the technology gadgets. So with those also come the health concerns that we look into, be it a lazy eyes, be it the refractive error that we have, or be it a sedentary lifestyle that we lead into, or the binge eating, with which there are grave health concerns which will be there in the later life. So how do we look into it, sir? And how can we coax them to go back to their routine of playing in the playground, meeting their friends, and taking those initiatives accordingly? The same question is for Harish Shetty, sir, as well, because what we have seen is though we were forced for the circumstances to become confined to the four corners of the wall, but now it's becoming equally resistant to bring them out of the four walls, even if things can be in our control. So, what is your take on that, sir?
It's a very important point that you raise, that COVID 18 months have raised significant number of couch potatoes with Lay's packets in their hand and either in Netflix or some video game being screened ahead. And I think that those terminologies of screen time and those things don't apply in my mind. I think sanskars are more important than the screen time culture. How many times at 7 p.m. I would also stand with my son or with my grandson in front of that small temple in the home and recite a prayer. But there are households where things are done. There are households when the dinner is served, the prayer is said first. It could be any religion. Why does it happen in some and it does not happen in others? Fault is not with the child. Fault is with the way that the upbringing is happening. And now, in the COVID era, as we are opening up, the task force very, very cautiously opened, first of all, activities like swimming for competitive swimmers, waited for 2 weeks, see that there is no increase in the numbers, and then from last Monday have opened up swimming pools for even non-competitive swimmers. The only problem that is happening in children just now is that they are not yet vaccinated. The vaccines are round the corner, and I think by January we would see the vaccination starting in kids. But yes, just bear us with us for about a couple of months. Let there be adequate stocks for vaccines so that we can take care of our little ones, and that would ease off these in-house pressures of children.
So you just mentioned about the vaccines. Taking this further, so we have around 2 vaccines that we are expecting to be rolled out, and we also have to. We understand that there would be certain kids who may not be able to get it. So if you could throw some highlights on it, like
We
which
will.
segment needs to be getting.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
just now we have two choices. Choices in terms of the government, not individual people. We will have the Covaxin, which has been tested, and the initial results have come out clean for 2 to 18 years. And the second vaccine is Zydus vaccine, which is true for 12 years onwards. Now, both these things are being manufactured in adequate amount. I am sure that the government will regulate, public as well as private sector, both will be participating in its distribution. Covaxin will have two dosages at 28 days interval to be given by an injection with a syringe and needle. And Zydus vaccine comes with a firing gun. So it's one kind of device where you can immunize a series of children. and that vaccine is driven intradermally. And just now, as we see, there are three dosages, again to be taken at 28 days interval for this. So I'm sure that things are being considered. Things will be rolled out in strategic planned phases, just as we did for adults. And yes, there would be some children where the vaccine will be either relatively contraindicated or indicated to be given with close monitoring. So that all phase will clear out by January.
Thank you, sir. So my next question actually goes to Revathi ma'am. So like we understand that officers, we are looking at two vaccines to be mandatory for officers to resume. So in the similar way, can we expect that the child should complete the entire vaccination schedule post which they'll be called into schools?
So we would like to actually encourage children to have their vaccinations once it has all come through. We would want them to do it. We would want them to still carry forward this whole concept of self-protection by the way of masks, distancing, physical distancing, and things like that. I am, in fact, looking at Singania School to function in small batches only. In fact, that's how I have a vision for my school, that it opens up in batches and giving breaks in between, so that would energize and re-energize people as well. But at the same time, we will encourage parents to have the vaccine because it should be a part of it. But as some of the parents may have, in case they are sort of reluctant and there is a reluctance, I think it's important for us to convince them. But if there are difficulties because of some kind of health issue, I think they need to consult their doctor and come back to us. But on any account, we're going to be continuing with a hybrid model anyway. So children are not going to lose out on any learning component. What they may ultimately lose out, or perhaps, is the fun element which comes in meeting friends and having fun in school grounds. That they may miss out. But I think we're going to be spacing it out, and we will be able to handle that better. But I think at some point of time, this vaccination component is very, very important for children.
Thank you so much. Harish Shetty sir, you will agree that we are in the era of Facebook likes, Instagram likes, and things like that. Similarly, kids are also being, because of being digitally driven nowadays, they also have the same notion. Like if we take a pic, are we ready to upload it instantly for the friends to see or for the relatives to see? So, and with that, obviously, there is some amount of peer pressure with the likes that we get, which comes like Oaks rightly mentioned, it comes through a culture. Basically, how are we doing it and how are we looking into it? So, what is your take on that, and how can we ensure that the social media or the communication that's being used does not have a negative impact on the child? You're on mute.
Asked how to lure a child from the home to the playground. Every child has a different stimulus, and the stimulus that is necessary for the child can be discovered by the parents, the school teachers, etc. And very slow exposure to the world around is extremely important. A large number of children are already going out, by the way. They're going out and they're having parties. I mean, I'm talking about teenagers, but smaller kids, they need fresh air, they need the sunlight, they need the moonlight, they need to see other children. It's not very difficult unless you're very shy and introverted. That is one. The children who refuse to go out and give very vague reasons. It's good to have a chat with the teacher. It's good to have a favorite teacher of the child speak to the child. And it's good to have the family doctor to speak to the child. And if not, it's good to have a close member of the family to invite the child over. So use a lot of small creative measures before you get into a psychologist or a psychiatrist. But if you find a child very withdrawn, then you need to really check whether the serotonin has gone down, if there's something wrong in the brain or the mood of the child. Now, as far as you are asking about something else at the end.
I looked about the Instagram and the Facebook likes.
Allow them to post. I'm okay with that, as long as the source of self-esteem is not only the Instagram and the Facebook. If the source of the self-esteem is multiple, I like my uncle's company, I like to go and play down with my friends, and I come home late, but I'm very happy about it, and there's Instagram, etc., that's perfectly all right. But the Instagram is very, very, very dangerous for young boys and girls, because a lot of people whom they like are not what they are. They're much older to them. they they actually lure them for other activities, and I have seen in my lifetime a lot of girls falling prey to elderly men without knowing whom they were. So what is very important is that a lot of communication inside the family about gadgets is important. And one software in the family which always been have been emphasizing for years, that the child has the courage to share bad news early with the parents. And if that is there, then you prevent catastrophes. But nothing wrong if they post a lunch or a dinner, or a look, or something, some tattoo, perfectly all right, as long as the source of self-esteem is not the Instagram and the Facebook live. And I always tell parents that trust your child completely, but see that you keep your eyes open and wide open to see if there's anything happening. Please preempt, get the help of a teacher, a school principal, a counselor, a relative, or a neighbor, and see that you prevent catastrophes.
Thank you so much. Revati ma'am, you would like to add something to this? Ma'am,
Yeah,
you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Yeah. It's very natural for these children to be, wanting to seek attention sometimes. And, but I personally believe that I think if we keep their self esteem high, and there is a lot of communication in the home and in school, that feeling of wanting to have that many likes, because if it's a competition about the number of likes that one has and the number of comments that one receives, then I think it needs to be intervened, and we need to enter that and talk to the child. But if it is all about, as Dr. Shetty rightly said, it's about a group event that they had, then it's perfectly all right to put up a couple of, but just that job and just doing that all the time is worrisome. And I think that requires some kind of an intervention, both from the parent as well as, if they need to meet up with a counselor, they need to meet up, because it's about not having the right kind of feeling good factor in them. So I think that's very important. I truly believe that's important. But otherwise, these kind of social media handles are there to stay. What we can do is give them very strong roots, which, like value systems, culture that we can develop in our family, in our schools, that will keep them grounded, and they'll have enough and more things to do. Why do we come and sit on a social media handle? Because I don't have something that's going to occupy my mind, that I can do fruitful, something that will make me feel good when I've contributed something. So I think it's important for us to our children to have some rural immersion programs, some teacher child program, these kind of programs that will get them to feel good, and where they would receive a lot of, and I think then you don't need that kind of social media at all to tell them. So I think that kind of a precaution one must take. And for that, it is important for us to develop a culture in schools and at our homes, where it is about values, it is about, contributing our might towards something, some good cause. So that works well with children, and or just engaging them properly. I think music, dance, all of that, there's something they love. So if they choreograph something, I think they feel good because they are getting acknowledged by their friends. That's what is important.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that so much. Dr. Oak, we had questions pertaining to the winter setting in. There are some respiratory complaints that we look into. Also, we do have viral fevers, cold and flu right now, and with the COVID also being around. So, some quick takeaways for all of us as to how do we look into this, and especially with the vaccination not being around, would you recommend a pneumococcal vaccine or an influenza vaccine to be given to the kids?
No, first of all, pneumococcal vaccine is for entirely different indications. It is for pneumococcal, which is a bacterial infections. Influenza vaccinations are for that specific influenza and para-influenza viruses, which are annual shots. COVID vaccination is going to be still different. So you are going to have a bag full of vaccines, but this is what always we had. We had, when we were school kids, I used to get a shot of typhoid, paratyphoid, every year come June. So these three vaccines are different. Don't feel that by giving pneumococcal, the other two can be protected. No, these are entirely different diseases caused by different agents, and therefore you need to boost up your immunity by taking these vaccines. And you asked about common cold. Yes, it is prevalent. In fact, every other person just now is either having common cold, runny nose, stuffy maxilla, stuffy throat, difficult to swallow, difficult to drink. And we all clinically suspect that there is a different virus called as RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, which is causing this problem. But it is very mild. It is not the same as what COVID does. Well, some of the viruses will also piggyback on COVID and will happen to those even who have suffered from COVID. They will get these kind of problems, but every other person is getting it and getting cured also out of it. So let's not worry too much about that. We live in spite of them.
Sure, sir. Also, one more question that we had with the air pollution level being extremely high across in the metros and climate changes that is happening globally. So, are there any other health outcomes that we expect in the younger generation, and what should we be prepared accordingly for?
No, undoubtedly, the prevalent air quality indices are not very healthy. If you look at Delhi, it shudders, it sends a shuddering chill down my spine. And in some suburbs of Mumbai also, we are not very comfortable. Now, what this all makes is makes your respiratory tract prone for different issues and different problems. You can develop asthmas, you can develop allergies, and you become prone for several bacterial infections. Your respiratory tract gets hyper irritable, and with the slightest stimulus, you can get different types of reactivity of that particular respiratory tract. So undoubtedly, we have to get awakened out of these difficulties and leave a better universe for the generations to follow. We have to plant some seeds whose fruits we may not see, but the next generations will bear it.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much for that insight. Harish Shetty, sir, we are nearly ending towards the end of the session. It's nearly 4:27 right now. I would begin with you. What would be your key takeaways with Children's Day coming near and ensuring that all of us praying that we get out of COVID very soon and we come back to the normal, though the new normal won't be the old normal. But then, what are your key takeaways that you would like to give us? So you're on mute. Some mute.
I see their schools will open and they may not open completely. Kids may attend school for a few days, and few days they would be at home. I'm very anxious to see kids playing, and that is one of the most important stimulative activity for a child. I see that we need to really take care of our teachers. I mean, let us not underestimate their role and overestimate their resilience. For me, the key takeaways is mental health for all. That is number one. The second key takeaway is there's a lot of underprivileged children and special children who are finding it very difficult. Dr. Oak knows, he has worked a lot with special children. He knows. And they are not able to attend school. Their plight at home is tremendously bad. They're violent, withdrawn, and I hope that special schools are given preference and support by the state so that they open very fast. So mental health for all, more attention for special kids, and let's manage our teachers sensitively, their salaries, their financial status, as well as their work hours. And I do not want to convert those teachers into gods. They're human beings. They need money, they need encouragement, they need support, and they need a lot of mental relief. I hope that the family, as Professor Revathi said, there's communications as a family, and there's respect between each other. I think these are the small things. But mental health for all is the most important message.
Sure. Thank you so much for that. Because you're referring to mental health for all, So I think we would like we look at employee assistance program in the corporates to have a support that needs to be given to the employees in case of crisis.
I need
Do
to, I
you
need,
think?
I need to interrupt you here. No, no, I'm
Sure,
not very happy with only with EAP. You need to
sure,
have a
sir.
mental health policy in your company.
Agree,
What
sir.
will you do
Completely
if
agree on that.
somebody is depressed? Will you throw him out? Will you say come back in 15 days? Otherwise, you'll have to quit. Mental health policy that is inclusive, EAP, and a counseling center in your company is what we need in all corporates.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. The reason I asked you this was, like we just mentioned, that officers do have this support nowadays, and yes, the awareness for this has surely gone up post the COVID times. But do you think schools should also be equally equipped now, since we are dealing with different categories of school out here? We may not be well equipped to address. So, for such parents or for such people who are not living in the metropolitan cities, there, how do we look at the children, and what would be the signs that we need to understand for us to consult a qualified person for that?
Again, I would say Goa appointed 65 psychologists in every school years ago, and Govan, the chief minister of Goa then was the first chief minister who funded school counseling from the kitties of the state government. I think every chief minister should look at mental health in Zilla Parishad schools, etc., etc. I think we need to make this a mandate. The Supreme Court has said that special teachers need to be given to kids with issues. A few days back, there was the Supreme Court order. I think all Supreme Court orders will happen, but entire country should look at mental health as one, and every school should have a child protection policy, a mental health policy, and also a drug addiction policy, wherein which are inclusive. And at the same time, if you look at the mental policy, it is static since 2014. Nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. And if you look at the famous new education policy, there's no word of counseling there. There's nothing on mental health. There's only one page on disability. And if you look at the Disability Act 2016, they had given 2 years for all the states to fall in line with all the assurances which they need to do. And 2021, it has not happened. So country has faltered, the states have faltered. We need to really ramp up mental health systems across the country, rural as well as urban, and also understand that the vigor you use to acquire military power, the vigor you use to save lives, the vigor you use to make vaccines should be seen in mental health activism also.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for that. Revathi ma'am, coming over to you. Yes, we are all looking for the school to start across pan India, I would say, and with kids going back. So whenever we think about kids who have been in, say, nursery or in junior KG, kids who have not experienced the first day of schooling, that is what something that disheartens all of us. So, what are your key takeaways, and how do we look forward for an enriching digital revolution that we are looking out?
Um, I'm really looking forward to the day the school really reopens and children start coming into school. I'm talking about the younger ones because the older ones have already started coming. But at the same time, I look at safety first now, and also that the kind of happiness quotient that we can give them. And I think it's important for us to make them emotionally very strong. And I want to see happy faces and happy families, because when there are happy families, then there are automatically happy children. I also see that education has been rebooted completely, and it is about relooking, redesigning our curriculums and pedagogy so that we get the better output. It is today not about what is the outcome, learning outcome. If I do this, what is the outcome that I'm going to get? Today, it is about the kind of competency that will come out of this. For example, if I teach my children in kindergarten what it is to say good morning or sorry when you do something wrong, it doesn't mean that at every point of time my child says good morning, good afternoon, or say sorry. I think it's important that when they have to use that, they use it. So when it gets transformed into behavioral practice, automatically our teaching or whatever we have taught in our classrooms becomes more effective. And that means the competencies have arrived. So I think that's one thing. And for parents, is just this line from Khalil Gibran, which I love very much and which is so pertinent today, especially with what we have gone through. Your children are not your children, they are sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, not from you. So when we remember that, they are with you, and therefore we have to give them the best environment so that they grow up to be happy children. And I think that's what is important. We must teach our children to make the best of whatever opportunities that they get, and how do they start seeing things in a brighter way. And that's what I would say. For my teachers, I'd like to say, and to all teachers across the world, they are all my teachers too. So I'd like to just say that I think it's important to believe that you have done a great job, but it's just not enough. You have to evolve yourself, and I think for each one of us have to evolve ourselves, and we have to start looking at education, teaching, learning, and all the processes involved very differently. And I think that's what it could really do. And for parents, I'd like to say every moment that you get is what you have to look forward to as a moment that you can associate with as a beautiful memory for your child, because 15 years down the line, when your child grows up and he starts talking in terms of the year 2020, 21, he should have lovely things to say that, my dad and I would be, or my dad, mom and I, we would narrate stories. My father would give such Daravana ghost stories, and we used to be frightened. I was a little kid then. That's a story he would have to tell his child, or she would tell her child. So those are moments that we need to capture in our minds, and therefore let's weave stories and lovely stories for our children to share with their children, so that for generations on end we remember that there would be difficulties in life, but we just need to have a mind as an open parachute, so that we can just take off wherever we are, and find peace within ourselves. I think that's where I'd like to look at.
Thank you, madam. That's really so insightful to listen itself. Sanjay Oak, sir, over to you for the closing comments, and also any other questions. If somebody has, you can just type in quickly. Yes, sir.
I will go by my surgical approach. Change is here to stay. Hybrid culture is here to stay. Technology can change you externally, but spirituality will change you internally. Competent is not enough. Compassionate is more what is required. It's just not you and your family, but the neighbors and the community are as important as you are. For teachers, you have been the backbone, but internalize yourself within. Unlearning is more difficult than learning. So come out of the phase that in our times this was not there. Try and learn the newer things quickly. Remember and behold, future generations always learn technology quickly and faster than what you and me can do. And the last message, if there has been a darkness for last 18 months, light is not far away. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that. I would take this opportunity to thank, on behalf of the entire Tata Motors Insurance Broking and Advisory family and our CEO, Mr. Ravichandran. Thank you for giving us time with all your busy schedules that's been going on. I'm sure that the session has been insightful to all the participants who have attended, and I'm sure that we'll have more views going forward. Really, thank you, and looking forward for some enriching sessions again. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.